Today's episode of the Energy Newsbeat podcast is brought to you by Enverus. The energy industry faces massive challenges every day, and the events over the last 2 years have caused huge disruptions like never before. Companies in the energy industry need actionable intelligence and a single source of truth that brings all the data together. Enverus is the energy specialized technology partner that provides intelligent connections for a global energy ecosystem. Only Enverus has the analytics, people, experience, and industry scope to connect the right data and information in the right way to discover missed opportunities and deliver fast outcomes. Find out more at Enverus.com. That's ENVERUS.com.
Hello, everybody. Today is a great day. Not only is it a great day, I got a special guest today. Thank you and welcome to the Energy Newsbeat podcast. My name's Stu Turley, President and CEO of the Sandstone Group. And I've got a really special guest for you guys. His name's Drew Bond. He's been on the podcast before, so I'll affectionately call him a retread. And I'm not sure if he's a retread as far as being, at least he was gracious enough to come back on the podcast. But he is the president and CEO of C3 Solutions, and they're an educational outfit organization in Washington, D.C., inside the Beltway. Hey, thank you, Drew, for stopping by.
Stu, thanks so much for having me again. I'm so glad that you're having me back and I didn't scare you away the first time. So I'm delighted to be here.
Well, actually, I'm like, when I was growing up, I had a pork chop hanging around my neck just so the dog would play with me. So I am so grateful that you are even back here. But, when our first interview, you did so great with talking about COP26. And, my whole theory is low-cost, sustainable energy needs to be available to everybody on the planet so we can elevate everybody out of poverty. And I don't care if we use wind, solar. I love batteries as long as they're, recyclable. Let's let the markets decide. Let's let the lowest cost energy get there. And if it's wind, yay. If it's solar, yay. But on the other hand, let's talk about it and let's not throw away fossil fuels and then print money. So with that being said, your job as an educator, there's two sides of the camp and everybody's not talking. So your education, tell us about that, because COP26 was really entertaining. And everything I read about COP27, I'm like, I don't know what to say.
Yeah, I really appreciate how you framed the question, because I think there's kind of two sides of the same coin around this whole issue, whether you're talking about COP or climate or the environment or energy, right? As everybody has their perspectives, they all come from their kind of opposing camps. And in reality, the truth is kind of somewhere in the middle. I mean, look, the Conference of Parties meeting, or COP as they call it, this is the 27th time they've had it. Last year was the first time that I've ever been. And, it's, I don't know, tens of thousands, almost 50,000 people get together somewhere around the world to talk about, climate change and how we're going to fix it. And you've got the, sort of the radical left environmentalists who say we got to keep all the fossil fuels in the ground and we got to do it today. And if we don't, we're all going to die tomorrow or in 10 years.
Right.
And then, you've got folks on the right, tend to be more aligned with where I am, sort of, center right, libertarians, conservatives, whatever you want to call yourself, free market oriented people that generally believe that, the best thing you can do is for the climate is to lift people out of poverty, as you noted. And the best thing that has lifted people out of poverty historically has been fossil fuels. Right. So that doesn't mean we have to be fossil fuel focused, heavyweight forever. It just means that, look, let's not kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater on this. Fossil fuels have an important role to play in the world. They've gotten us to where we are today in terms of elevating people out of poverty, and the food and the medicines and the transportation and all the modern conveniences that people have come to appreciate and have also extended our lifetimes have come from our ability to harness fossil fuels in a way that is economical. And so, now do we want to find a way to use those more efficiently in the future? Absolutely. Do we want to find a way to ensure that if and when we use those, to what extent we use those, we use them in a way that reduces their overall environmental impact? Absolutely. Right. And to your point, like, renewables have a real role to play in all of this, but we can't get ahead of our skis on this idea that renewable energy can simply step in for fossil fuels today, or even 10 years from now, or even frankly, 20 or 30 or 40 years from now. I mean, it is if you want to talk about an energy transition, it is going to be a very long transition. And then you've got to think about holistically, globally. You've got the developed world, which has gotten to where it is today based on largely fossil fuels. And you've got the developing world, which is, chomping at the bit to develop, and they are developing, and they're going to develop one way or another. They're going to develop with fossil fuels, or they're going to develop with renewables, or they're going to develop with some mix. And so, I think panning back out to your question about COP, I think one of the challenges I'll say that I have with that conference every year is that the headlines are always gloom and doom. The governments must step in and solve the problem, and that leads us down a path, and always is about some announcements about spending more money. Spending more taxpayer money is going to solve the problem. And so, look, does government have a role to play in helping to solve this? Absolutely. Is it a problem? Absolutely. There's a risk here. And so we need to reduce that risk. So how do we reduce the risk in a way that is practical, that is safe, that is reliable, that helps countries and people really rise to higher and higher levels of prosperity? So I think hopefully you can kind of read past the headlines, because if you only read the headlines, you will see that the world's going to end tomorrow if the government doesn't step in, and we need to spend more government money to solve it, and we need to go 100% renewables. And that's not reality. That's not going to fix it.
Well, Drew, I did. I went and got my Harry Carry knife out of the closet, and I was about ready to just knife myself, because it was like, oh my goodness, we're going to die tomorrow. The polar bears are all going to blow up, and it was really awful. But we've printed money to go to renewables for over 20 years, and then printing money gets you to inflation. And now you're getting to inflation and the high cost of energy. I mean, this is a snowball effect, and the world is facing some financial crises because we're just forcing it to go this way instead of letting the markets handle it. Like you said, I love letting the markets handle it, but let's have the least amount of impact. So when you were there at 26, what was the temperature there at COP 26 versus what we saw? Because this might be able to tell us what the difference was on the ground there, of 50,000 of your closest friends bumbling around. I hate people. So, I mean, that would absolutely be horrible to me to be around 50,000 other people at a conference. Do you understand the question? Am I making sense on that? What was different there versus what was out? Because if we're only seeing this part of it, some of the reports that I saw come out of it were very heavy regulatory kind of things that would, again, cause more costs. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think, if I understand your question, it's sort of, what changed from last year to this year? Is there any kind of a different tune? And what are the policies that are being promoted, this year that might be different from last year? I'll say, last year, there was a fairly heavy focus on private sector innovation. So that, frankly, was encouraging. Of course, you've got a lot of, government officials that come from around the world and sustainability gurus, but you also had a lot of CEOs and a lot of companies that were represented there, talking about innovation, making various commitments. There was at least, I think, a healthy balance of sort of private sector versus public sector. The headlines are not always, the full story, as people know. And then you had different camps of people. You had the extreme environmentalists who were out there protesting, calling for socialism, communism, as if that's somehow going to be good for the environment. And I walked around some of those crowds, and some of those people are genuinely crazy. Some of those people are genuinely, I think, probably trying to do the right thing and just have a different world perspective than me, and that's okay. So those are the types of people that we need to learn how to talk with more and find a way to solve problems with. But the reality is a lot of those folks, couldn't have gotten that conference and couldn't have signed, held up their protest signs without fossil fuels. I mean, those signs were made with ink, and I'm pretty sure that ink was probably, petroleum based. So, not to put too much of a light on that, but just the reality is that there's sort of this a little bit of hypocrisy in, or sort of, I don't know, there's some folks, especially in the kind of extreme left environmental camp that just have this Pollyannish view of like, let's just go all in renewables tomorrow and we'll save the world. And as I have a solar company, so I don't have anything against renewables. I like solar, happy to sell you my product, but I don't actually want to live in a country right now at any time soon that is 100% renewable until the baseload power generation is there. And so, these are the types of conversations I think we have to have honestly and without hopefully too much emotion, and just from a civil society perspective. As a friend of mine said recently, we were on a panel together, and he said, I think we need to make energy policy boring again, because it's been so hyper politicized, and you've got folks that want to turn out the lights and hope for the best, and you've got other folks that want to throw those folks out, and so the reality is you need an all the above strategy. You need to we need to be innovating. We should be innovating, and we need to be owning the innovation and not only using it for ourselves, but also exporting it for the world's benefit. And when the United States does that, when the United States leads on innovation, the rest of the world benefits. And that's innovation for natural gas. That's innovation for solar and wind and nuclear energy, and even coal for that matter. I mean, I know everyone loves to hate on coal, but the United States has some of the cleanest coal-fired power plants in the world. And you look at what's happening in China. I mean, China, I think the last figure I saw had over 1,100 coal-fired power plants. We have about 240 in the United States. So they've got like 5 times as many coal-fired power plants as we do. And they're building them faster than we could possibly ever do it. And at the same time, last year at the COP, you had President Xi Jinping commit to not building any coal-fired power plants. Well, what has he done since then? He's built 14 more, and I think there's another 26 that are online in the future. So there's a big gap between sort of the words that come out of COP and actually the actions that are happening in the real world. And I think that's where people get really cynical. And I find myself trying to not be cynical, to say like, all right, look, the reality is like climate change is a risk. I'm not at all on the kind of high end of the alarm meter. I think we can innovate our way forward on this issue, and also with other measures like adaptation and natural solutions that involve regenerative agriculture. I mean, there's so many good things that we can pursue and do to fundamentally just leave this planet better than we found it for our children. And so conservatives, free market people, most people believe in that idea that, all right, whether you think God created this earth or not, and I'm one who actually thinks God created it, I have a responsibility to leave it better than I found it. And so I'm not going to worship the creation, but I am going to have a responsibility for stewarding it. And so how do I do that responsibly so that I can also help lift people out of poverty globally? And I think that from a COP perspective, what I would have loved to see this year, which I didn't see, which is this idea, and you touched on it even early in the discussion, is how do we help rise people out of poverty? Because fundamentally that's good for the environment. And instead what we heard this year was talk about climate reparations. So this idea that like developed countries should pay developing countries a penalty, basically a fine because we were speeding, right? We went too fast with innovation, therefore we got to pay the developing world this fine, and they can somehow use that money to be better off.
Right.
And we know that that's going to benefit bureaucrats and it's going to benefit
Right.
consultants, but it's not going to ultimately really change things in the way they need to be changed.
No. See, and Ecuador is a perfect example of that, what you just described. China companies, China has come in and funded a bazillion things in the country. And now their oil companies are destroying the rainforest. And then they're selling 75% of the oil that those Chinese oil companies take from the rainforest, destroying the rainforest, California buys.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, when the majors, let's say China, because they go in and they give the governments money to buy all these other things, and then they go in and act like the Godfather and say, "Hey, we want your natural resources," and then they handcuff them. I mean, this is like counterproductive. So why do we have the right? In that case, I understand reparations, but I don't know. That reparations idea is not seeming to be a good idea.
No, I would say it's a terrible idea. I mean, what the extreme environmental left is calling for is reparations, such that energy companies, so fossil fuel energy companies, right, have to pay for the damage that they've done, quote unquote, damage they've done, to the developing world. Now, all of that ignores the benefits that have come from fossil fuels, right? So,
good point.
So, I mean, there's a real net benefit in terms of raising people out of poverty. And again, I'm not here to promote the fossil fuel industry. I just think we need a real practical approach to recognizing that energy, all forms of energy, have trade-offs. And fossil fuels are great in some places and not great in other places, right? And is there corruption in some places? Absolutely. Just look at OPEC, right? I mean, we've got the price of the barrel of oil, which ultimately results in the gasoline price at the pump, essentially governed by, dictated by, heavily influenced by OPEC, these countries that all collude with one another.
Right.
So that's a negative thing for sure. From a renewable perspective, look, solar energy is great. It doesn't, emit any emissions while it's sitting there collecting energy, collecting the sun's energy and turning it into electricity. But you also have to recognize, well, okay, let's go back through the supply chain and find out where this was made. How was it made? It turns out a lot of that production was done with fossil fuels. Or it was done in a way that wasn't environmentally friendly, or was perhaps done in a way that wasn't up to the United States labor standards. And so, again, not always in all cases, right? I mean, we have solar panels that are made here in the United States in some cases, but we still are at a point where a lot of the renewable materials, the critical minerals that go into the materials that make these renewable forms of energy, solar, wind, and the batteries that you need to back them up, 90% of that is made or processed in China.
Right.
So China's processing these critical minerals and mining that goes into renewable energy, and China's processing that critical minerals and doing the mining using what form of energy? They're largely using coal, right? China I think accounts for like 50% of the world's coal in terms of electricity production.
Right.
So it's one of these things where you've seen it before, where someone drives around with a Tesla and they have a license plate that says, zero emission. Well, and look, I don't have anything against Tesla. I like Teslas. I would love to buy one. I think they're really cool cars. And it's true that there's no emissions coming out of the pipe, but there are emissions upstream somewhere where that electricity is being generated. And so, let's just not fool ourselves in this discussion that there's like one perfect form of energy. There are multiple forms of energy. They all have trade-offs, and we have to recognize that. Yeah,
Drew, you said that so great. I do like that. I would love a Tesla as well too, but I don't want, I got to tow my boats.
And well, you can get a Tesla truck. I mean, those are pretty cool.
Oh, but I mean, as soon as I go over 100 miles, I got to go sit in some place to charge it for 4 hours or 5 hours. When a boat owner, you don't want to be towing with an electric vehicle.
Yeah.
Now, the one thing about EVs, I did see a meme the other day, Drew, that was a hoot. Some guy was getting ready to have his, after 3 years, he had to buy a whole new battery outfit. I think it was $24,000. So he went out there and go, here's what I'm doing for my $24,000. And he strapped dynamite all the way around the Tesla, walked back and blew up the Tesla. I'm like, because he didn't want to pay the $24,000.
Huh.
And that piece of it is not factored into the cost of that vehicle at the end of 4 years. They say 5 and these kind of things, but he was losing charge all the time because batteries do degrade.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's, bad examples of every, I mean, the reality is, look, combustion engine vehicles break down all the time, right? So it's like, it's a car, it's a technology, it's not perfect, it has trade-offs. So, this is not a religion, it's a car, it's technology, it's energy. So, like I said, I would love to buy a Tesla if you ever had a chance to drive a Model S and put it on ludicrous mode. It's the most exhilarating thing you've ever, probably been in terms of car. But to your point, like if I'm going to pull my boat or, long haul trucking in the United States still needs diesel. So there's no one perfect silver bullet solution for this. I just think we've got to be innovating on all of these forms of energy, and it's done best when it's done in the United States, frankly.
Cleanest, absolutely. And when you take a look at the coal, I saw a figure the other day that our new coal plants are 98% less polluting than the original ones or the ones that are in other countries. Some, I have to go check that number, but it was like over 90% less in impacting the environment. That almost is like, why not use that then? I mean, if you're 90% less impacting on coal, that's not a bad thing. Why don't we get that technology to the emerging markets? Let them use coal, but get that new technology for air scrubbers and everything else in there. Does that make sense? I mean, that would make sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think to your point, look, we have cleaner coal in the United States than most places in the world, and that's just something that we're blessed with. It wasn't anything we did, but and then in terms of the technology, I mean, look, this is where I guess you can give credit to the environmental community. They've been successful at forcing the use of scrubbers and all of these different things that have allowed us to have some of the cleanest coal generation in the United States or in the world. So, to your point, if you could export those to countries, if another country is going to make the choice to build a coal-fired power plant, they would be better off to build one with one of our facilities and the technology involved than with someone else's.
Exactly.
So that's, but I know that scares a lot of environmentalists because they don't want to build a coal-fired power plant because they know it's going to, last for 50 plus years, and then it's going to be, it's sort of anti their narrative. But I also think about, look, we've got, what did I say, 240 or so coal-fired power plants around the United States right now. So while the environmental community has been successful at reducing a lot of pollution because of things they've done, and oftentimes, honestly, the industry didn't like it, but they had to do it anyway.
And they have good points in many cases. So
but I also look at the other side of that coin is like, all right, well, the environmental community, particularly the extreme, has prohibited the United States from, in many cases, upgrading our coal-fired power plants because they wanted to shut them down. They didn't want them to live longer, right? They just wanted to get rid of coal-fired power plants. They didn't want to make them more efficient because if they made them more efficient, well, then they would live longer. Well, so how much extra greenhouse gas emissions, carbon, have we emitted into the air during that period of time when we could have actually upgraded our power plants as opposed to just continuing to sort of operate under less than optimal conditions?
Drew, you hit on a fabulous point. In fact, France is a living example of that, except it's on the nuclear side. Their nuclear fleet, they're the pristine, everybody wants to be them for zero carbon emissions, but they're only running at 50% of their nuclear fleet because they did exactly that. They did not pay to upgrade their pipes. They rusted. They can't. I mean, they didn't do any maintenance on them. So here they have these beautiful nuclear reactors with no maintenance, and they're now they're going to be more expensive to make those things last longer. And that's the same kind of thing. Why didn't they just keep investing in that? I mean, it's cheaper to keep a nuclear reactor rolling than it is to build a new one, and has less impact on the environment. I mean, that to me makes sense.
It's sort of the classic, perfect is the enemy of the good, right? And so the environmental perfect in that scenario was the enemy of something that it would have been an environmental improvement, although it wasn't perfect.
Right.
And we see that sort of, in across this space, as you've got sort of extreme positions driving it.
Right.
So, I think that's where, you mentioned, France. And I mean, I think one of the things that we're seeing right now play out across Europe as a result of the war in Ukraine,
right.
And I'll call it Putin's war in Ukraine, is, you had Germany, right, who decided to go all in solar, when honestly it really didn't have any business being that much solar. It's not the sunniest place in the world. And so it, shut down its coal-fired power plants. It wanted to get off nuclear. It wanted to get on solar and natural gas. Well, it decided to get its natural gas from Russia. And they, and some people raised alarms about that early on, and they said, "Oh no, it's fine. There's no geopolitical security issues. Russia's a great partner." Well, where are we today, right? I mean, Russia's basically controlling the spigot of natural gas that goes in and out of Germany, and Germany is in a very vulnerable position from an energy security standpoint, and it is impacting all of Europe. So much so that they're actually rationing energy, when instead they should be in a much stronger position.
Right.
So that's where it's like, look, if the environmental community in Germany, particularly the anti-nuclear crowd, won the argument, but they sort of lost the overall, war, if you call it, for lack of a better word, in that scenario, where it's like, Germany would be way better off if they had some of their energy nuclear, some of it, natural gas. Natural gas from the United States would be cleaner from Russia. I mean, I just go back to like the fundamental principle of like, let's not put all our eggs in one basket. I want diversified energy resources, and then I want to be always innovating, always driving towards cleaner and cleaner, more efficient technologies. And the more we can do that in the United States, selfishly, the better, but also not just for our purposes, but for the world.
Whatever we learn here needs to be exported.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Let me ask this tough question. We only got a few more minutes, but I saw a report, I believe it was on Bloomberg this week, where the East, up in the East, they don't have any pipelines, and we have to import LNG from Russia, Trinidad, and I believe there's like 2 other places. We've had 10 to 12, whatever the number of ships that have come in. They have the Pennsylvania Marcellus right there. It's 300 miles away. We would even be able to do nice, cheap things, but they're facing rolling blackouts and major problems up there. How can C3 Solutions help educate folks to try to do exactly, Drew, what you said? How do we get past this crisis that's going to come? What can you do, or what is on your roadmap to be able to face, the Germany problem that we now have in the US? What is on your target to do that?
Well, I'll say, look, we're a 501c3 educational organization, so our kind of 3-pronged strategy, much like many think tanks, is policy is priority, and then we work with coalitions, try to build bridges where we can to find common ground on these issues. And then, communications is real key. So it's policy, coalitions, communications. On the communications front, it's getting our message out there and helping people understand that, like, hopefully, after this interview, people don't think I'm, crazy, but I don't think all free market conservatives are crazy. And nor do I think all people on the left are crazy, right? And so, like, we need to actually have a real conversation about these trade-offs and understand, what's at stake. And so, we do that by meeting with members of Congress and educating them and their staffs. We, work with groups that are across the political and ideological spectrum. We very much come from the perspective of we're free market conservatives. But we're happy to work with folks sort of center and left. And then on the communication side of things, it's opportunities like this to be on your show. So thank you for that. And then, as you know, we have an online news magazine that folks can find at c3newsmag.com. And the point of that news magazine is actually to be a kind of a place where people can go to learn about technology, to learn about innovation.
It's an excellent website. Yeah, I'm sorry for interrupting, but it is an excellent website. And people need to sign up for your newsletter because, you guys are rock stars with getting that out there. So if somebody wants to support you and sponsor you, they can reach out to you in that same place, right?
Yeah, please. We've got a newsletter that's free. Our website is free of ads. So it's really just purely an educational website. It's, c3newsmag.com. We would welcome financial support from anybody that would be willing to give it to us. We're a nonprofit, and so we have to raise money. And so, but I think the more our focus really is on, like, how can we disseminate good education and ideas, dialogue around these issues, because I think there's this is a complicated space, right? Energy is complicated, and it doesn't have to be, nor should it be, so politicized.
Well, Drew, your C3 Solutions is providing, I think, the most important piece is education and being there to bring both sides together to talk. And just in summary, you nailed it with a lot of cool suggestions and things. So thank you so much for putting up with me and coming back on the show. I had an absolute blast. So you got the last word. Give us your last word and then we'll shut out here.
Well, I would just encourage folks, look, the climate challenge is something that can be addressed. So one of the key things that we talk about when we publish a report on this is how economic freedom leads to a cleaner environment. And so if you really want to solve the world's climate issues, you start with the foundation of economic freedom. And we've seen this in the data that free economies are clean economies. And so economic freedom leads to a cleaner environment, actually twice as clean. And so when you think about the developing world and how they're going to grow, we need to be exporting not only innovation, but we also need to be exporting economic freedom for those countries as they develop, so that they become our allies in the future. So anyway, there's so much more we could talk about, but I'm really grateful to have the opportunity to just get a couple words in. So thank you, Stu.
Hey, thanks. All your information will be in the show notes, and we'll be getting this out right away.